At 9:04 a.m. on a Tuesday, the air conditioning in Superior Courtroom 402 hummed, but nobody heard it. The only thing the 70 people in the gallery could hear was the sound of Judge Vance slowly peeling the seal off a large manila envelope. This wasn't a murder trial. It wasn't a cartel sentencing. It was something much darker and infinitely more embarrassing. Sitting at the defense table was Elara. She looked perfect. She was wearing a soft white dress, clutching a tissue, looking every bit the exhausted, struggling mother of twins. She had spent the last 20 minutes crying without tears, playing the victim, banking on the fact that the court system usually sides with the mother. She thought she had won. She thought the three men sitting across from her were there to sign checks, not death warrants for her reputation. And they were an odd group. First, there was Cassian, a high-end architect in a three-piece suit who designed skyscrapers for a living. He sat with his hands folded, staring at the wall. Next to him was Yarek, an oil rigger with grease permanently stained into his cuticles, wearing a flannel shirt that looked out of place in the sterile courtroom. And on the end was Torin, a tech CEO who looked like he hadn't slept in a month, typing frantically on a phone that had been smuggled past security. Three men, three different tax brackets, three different lives. They had nothing in common, except for one statistical impossibility. They were all currently paying maximum child support for the exact same set of twins. According to the paperwork Elara had filed in 3 different counties, these twins had 3 biological fathers, 3 different birth dates, and 3 different social security numbers. It was a mathematical miracle. Or, as the man in the back row whispered to his wife, it was the most expensive lie in the history of the state. Judge Vance pulled the document out of the envelope. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the paper, then he looked at the 3 paternity tests sitting on his bench, and finally, he looked at Elara. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a lung. The judge didn't yell. He didn't slam his gavel. He leaned into his microphone and spoke with a voice that sounded like gravel grinding on glass. He said, "Miss Elara, I have seen fraud before. I have seen theft, but what I am holding in my hand isn't a birth certificate. It is a confession." In that second, the air left the room. The struggling mother act evaporated. Elara's face went from tragic to terrified in a single heartbeat. The $45,000 she had siphoned from these men, gone. The 80,000 followers she had duped online, about to turn on her. But the jail time wasn't what broke her. The frozen assets weren't what made her sob for real. It was what happened 10 seconds later. Just as the bailiffs took a step forward, Cassian, the architect, the man she thought was too civilized to fight back, stood up. He didn't look at the judge. He turned his body and looked directly at Elara. He waited for the camera flash of the court reporter, and then he delivered a 7-word sentence, so cold, so brutal, and so accurate that the entire gallery gasped. It was a sentence that would go viral before the sun went down. A sentence that revealed he hadn't just been a victim. He had been the one pulling the strings of this trap for months. But to understand the sheer weight of that revenge, and to understand how a woman could fake an entire existence for 3 years without getting caught, we have to rewind. We have to strip away the courtroom, the lawyers, and the DNA tests. We have to go back to the moment the trap was first set. We have to go back to a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, 3 years ago, where a beautiful girl named Elara accidentally bumped into a lonely architect named Cassian and told him the first lie of 1,000. It started with a spilled latte, a shy smile, and a phone number. It looked like the beginning of a romance movie. But if you looked closely, right from the very first frame, there were cracks in the foundation that nobody, not even a genius architect, noticed until it was too late. Cassian was the kind of man who measured everything. As an architect, his life was governed by angles, load-bearing capacities, and structural integrity. He knew that if a foundation was off by a fraction of an inch, the skyscraper would eventually fall. But when he looked at Elara, he threw away the ruler. He didn't check the foundation. He just started building. For the first 6 months, their relationship wasn't just good. It was a masterclass in mirroring. This is the first tool of a professional con artist. They don't show you who they are. They show you a reflection of who you want them to be. Cassian liked jazz. Suddenly, Elara had a collection of vintage vinyls she forgot to mention. Cassian loved hiking. Elara showed up the next weekend with brand new boots and a story about trekking in Peru. He told her he was lonely in his massive glass-walled penthouse. She told him she was looking for a place to call home. It was seamless. It was efficient. It was artificial. But Cassian wasn't the only project she was breaking ground on. While she was playing the sophisticated art lover with Cassian in the city, she was driving 3 hours north on the weekends. That's where she met Jarek. Jarek was different. He spent 3 weeks at a time on an oil rig in the North Sea. He made 6 figures, had 0 debt, and 0 time to date. He wanted a woman who was low maintenance, someone who would be there when he got off the chopper. Elara became that woman. For Jarek, she wasn't the sophisticated city girl. She was the girl next door who drove a beat-up sedan and wore oversized hoodies. She told him she worked remote customer service shifts, which explained why she was always on her phone and why she could never FaceTime him at night. And then there was Torin, the tech CEO she bumped into at a wildly expensive airport lounge. Torin was looking for an intellectual equal, someone who didn't care about his money. So Elara played the role of the independent consultant, a woman too busy for a relationship, which, of course, made Torin want her immediately. 3 men, 3 distinct personas, one biological impossibility looming on the horizon. The timeline of the pregnancy announcement was calculated with military precision. It happened exactly 4 months after she met Cassian, the wealthiest of the 3. It was his birthday. Cassian had rented out the private room of a steakhouse. His friends were there. His business partners were there. He was feeling on top of the world. Just as the waiters brought out the cake, Elara stood up. She topped her glass with a fork. The room went silent. She looked nervous. Her hands were shaking. It was a perfect performance. She reached under the table and pulled out a small rectangular box wrapped in silver paper. She handed it to Cassian. "I didn't know what to get the man who has everything," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sell the emotion. "So I got you something you can't buy." Cassian opened the box. Inside wasn't a watch, it wasn't a key to a car. It was a positive pregnancy test and a tiny knitted pair of socks. The room erupted. Cassian, the stoic architect, buried his face in his hands and wept. His friends cheered. Champagne popped. In that moment, surrounded by applause and envy, Cassian felt like the luckiest man in the city. He didn't see a trap. He saw a legacy. He saw a nursery in the east wing of his penthouse. He saw a future. Elara hugged him, burying her face in his neck. To the room, it looked like love. But if you were close enough, you would have seen that her eyes were wide open, scanning the room, calculating the exit strategy. Because she had a problem. She had told Cassian she was pregnant. 2 days later, she drove north to the port and told Jarek, fresh off the rig, that she was pregnant. He proposed on the spot. 3 days after that, she FaceTimed Torin and told him the same thing. 3 men thought they were the father. 3 men were suddenly ready to open their wallets to protect their unborn child. But biology is a stubborn thing. You can fake a personality, you can fake a resume, you can even fake a positive test with $20 and a trip to the pharmacy, but you cannot fake a human being. Elara knew she needed to escalate the lie to keep them separated. She needed a reason why she would be elusive, why she would need more money, and why the pregnancy would require specialist care that kept her away from everyone. So at the 12-week mark, she dropped the second bomb. She didn't just tell them she was having a baby, she told them she was having twins. "High risk," she whispered to Cassian, looking pale. "The doctor says I need bed rest, total isolation, stress could lose them." "Twins," she told Jarek. "That's why I need to move to a specialized clinic closer to my mom." "Twins," she emailed Torin. "Double the expense, double the complication." It was a brilliant strategic move. High-risk twins gave her the ultimate excuse to disappear. If she didn't answer the phone, she was sleeping for the babies. If she couldn't see them, doctor's orders. If she needed cash, medical specialists are expensive. For a few months, it worked. The money started flowing. Cassian paid for a private doula. Jarek wired cash for a nursery deposit. Torin set up a college fund that she had access to. She was clearing $15,000 a month tax-free, playing 3 different men against a biological clock that didn't exist. It was the perfect crime. But there is a rule in architecture that Cassian could have told her if he wasn't so blinded by love. The higher you build, the more wind you catch. And Elara was building a skyscraper out of wet paper. The first crack in the facade didn't come from the police. It didn't come from the bank. It came from a receipt left in a pocket of a raincoat and a photo posted on Instagram that shouldn't have been there. Viewer, you might think you know where this is going. You might think she gets caught because the guys bumped into each other. No, that would be too simple. She got caught because she got greedy, she got arrogant, and she made a mistake so small, so subtle, that 99% of people would have missed it. But Cassian wasn't 99% of people. He was an architect. He noticed details. And one rainy Tuesday, he noticed something in the background of a hospital selfie that made his blood run cold. The photo was simple. It was a selfie taken in a mirror, captioned, "Another scare. Doctors want to keep me overnight. Pray for the twins." In the photo, Elara was wearing a standard-issue blue hospital gown. Her hair was messy. She looked exhausted. Behind her, you could see the edge of a hospital bed, a white wall, and a window with the blinds drawn. To a normal person, it was a sad update from a struggling mother. To Jarek, the oil rigger, it was a reason to wire another $2,000 for emergency comfort. To Torin, the CEO, it was a reason to send flowers. But to Cassian, the architect, it was a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Cassian was sitting in his office, staring at the high-resolution monitor he used for CAD rendering. He wasn't looking at the expression on her face. He was looking at the bottom left corner of the image, just past her hip. He saw the baseboard. In architecture, details are not suggestions. They're code. Building codes for medical facilities are strict. Hospitals, especially ICUs, do not use wooden baseboards with decorative grooves. Wood traps bacteria. Wood rots with industrial cleaning agents. Hospitals use integral vinyl cove base, sheet vinyl that curves up the wall to create a seamless, sterile seal. The baseboard in Elara's hospital room was a 4-inch colonial-style wooden molding. It wasn't a hospital. It was a bedroom or a hotel. Cassian felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. He zoomed in further. He looked at the electrical outlet next to the bed. In a hospital, outlets connected to backup generators are red. Standard outlets are hospital grade, marked with a green dot. This outlet was a standard residential white duplex receptacle. the kind you buy at Home Depot for $3. He didn't scream. He didn't throw his phone. He sat in total silence as the realization washed over him. She wasn't in the ICU. She was likely in her own guest room or an Airbnb, wearing a stolen gown, staging a medical emergency to avoid seeing him for the weekend. But Cassian wasn't the only one seeing cracks in the plaster. 3,000 miles away, out on the dark water of the North Sea, Jarek was lying in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He had just gotten off the phone with Elara. She had sounded weak, breathless. She told him she was on supplemental oxygen because the twins were pressing on her diaphragm. "I can hardly speak," she had whispered. "It feels like there's a weight on my chest." Jarek murmured his sympathies, feeling helpless. But now, in the silence of the rig, his brain was replaying the call. He remembered a sound. It was faint, in the background, just as she was hanging up. It was a rhythmic thump, hish, thump, hish. Jarek knew sounds. He knew the sound of a drill, a pump, a compressor, and he knew the sound of a hydraulic espresso machine clearing its steam wand. He'd heard that exact sound in the Starbucks at the airport. If she was in a sterile isolation room on oxygen, why was there a commercial espresso machine running 3 feet away from her? He tried to tell himself it was a nurse getting coffee. He tried to rationalize it, but the seed of doubt had been planted. And then there was Torin. Torin was the numbers guy. He didn't care about baseboards or background noise. He cared about data. Elara had sent him a digital copy of the latest ultrasound to justify a request for $4,000 for a fetal echocardiogram. Torin opened the image on his laptop. It showed 2 fuzzy gray blobs. Twin A and Twin B were labeled in white text. It looked real, but Torin worked in tech. He knew that every digital file carries a fingerprint called metadata. He right-clicked the image and selected Get Info. He expected to see the metadata from a GE Healthcare Voluson ultrasound machine. He expected to see a creation date of today. Instead, the metadata field for device was blank, but the field for software wasn't. It read, Adobe Photoshop CC 2024. And the date created? The file had been created 3 months ago, long before this specific test was supposed to have happened. Torin stared at the screen. The math didn't add up. He did what any paranoid tech CEO would do. He took the image and ran a reverse image search. For 10 seconds, the loading bar spun. Then the results populated. The first result wasn't a medical portal. It was a blog post from 2018 titled, What 12-Week Twins Look Like, a Guide for New Moms. The image was identical. The grain was the same. The angle was the same. The only difference was that Elara had cropped out the copyright watermark at the bottom. Torin closed his laptop. He didn't feel sadness. He felt the cold, hard click of a switch flipping in his brain. The girlfriend partition of his mind deleted itself. The threat elimination protocol engaged. At this point, a normal man might have called her. He might have screamed, "You're lying." He might have demanded his money back. But these weren't normal men. Cassian was an architect. He knew you didn't demo a building until you had the permits. Jarek was a rigger. He knew you didn't cap a well until the pressure was stabilized. Torin was a CEO. He knew you didn't fire an employee until you had the paper trail to deny unemployment. They didn't call each other. Not yet. They didn't confront her. Instead, they did the one thing Elara never expected. They agreed with her. Cassian texted her, "Rest up, babe. I'll send extra cash for a private nurse." Jarek texted her, "Don't worry about me. Focus on the twins." Torin wired the money. For the echocardiogram. Love you. They fed the beast. They gave her exactly what she wanted, lulling her into a false sense of security. They made her feel safe. They made her feel smart, because they knew that if she felt safe, she would get sloppy, and they needed her to be sloppy. They needed more than just a suspicion. They needed proof that would stand up in a court of law. Cassian cleared his schedule for the next week. "Where are you going?" his assistant asked. "I'm going on a site visit," Cassian said. "I need to inspect a foundation." He wasn't going to a construction site. He was going to the address where Elara claimed her mother lived, the address where the baby shower gifts were being sent. He parked his black SUV down the street, turned off the lights, and waited. He expected to see a pregnant woman waddling out to get the mail. What he saw instead would make his blood boil. At 10 a.m., the front door opened. Elara walked out. She wasn't waddling. She was wearing tight yoga pants and a crop top. Her stomach was as flat as a board. She jogged down the steps, light as a feather, carrying a large Amazon box, one of the boxes Jarek had sent. She threw it into the trunk of her car, hopped in, and sped off. Cassian started his engine. He didn't intercept her. He followed her. He followed her for 40 minutes, out of the suburbs, past the city limits, to a high-end shopping district. She pulled into the valet parking of the most expensive mall in the state. She walked into a designer boutique, carrying the box Jarek had sent. Cassian watched from the store window as she placed the unopened box of baby formula and diapers on the counter and asked for cash referable. She didn't want the diapers. She wanted the store credit. She walked out 10 minutes later, holding a new Gucci bag. Cassian took a photo. Then he took another. He had the visual, but he needed the network. He needed to know if he was the only one being played or if this was a franchise operation. That night, Cassian went home and did something illegal. He logged into Elara's shared Netflix account, the one she had logged into his TV months ago. He went to the viewing history. He saw the shows they watched together, but then he checked the logins. Netflix tracks where an account is being accessed from. There was his TV in Seattle, there was a login from a Samsung TV in Portland, and a login from an iPad in San Francisco. 3 locations, 3 active users. Cassian looked at the dates. The Portland login was active every night at 8 p.m. The San Francisco login was active on weekends. He wrote down the IP addresses. He traced the ISPs. He found the names associated with the internet bills at those locations. Jarek V. Torin B. Cassian sat back in his chair. The scope of the lie was breathtaking. He wasn't just cheating, he was running a corporation. He found Torin on LinkedIn. He typed a message. He deleted it. He typed it again. "Torin, you don't know me,
But I think we are both paying for the same ultrasound. Don't ask Elara. Call me at this number, tonight." The Zoom call happened at 2 a.m. 3 windows on a dark screen. Top left, Cassian, sitting in his penthouse, a glass of scotch untouched on his desk. Top right, Jarek, huddled in the comms room of the oil rig, the satellite delay making his video grain. Bottom center, Torin, in a server room, his face illuminated by the blue light of blinking hard drives. For the first 60 seconds, nobody spoke. They just looked at each other. They were sizing up the competition. They were looking for the enemy. But what they saw were reflections of their own stupidity. Cassian broke the silence. He held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a printout of the ultrasound Elara had given him. "Twin boys," Cassian said. "Due October 14th. Jarek squinted at the screen. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crinkled, grease-stained photo. He held it up. "Twin girls," Jarek said, his voice thick with suppressed rage. "Due October 14th.
Torin didn't hold up a photo. He just typed a command on his keyboard and shared his screen. "I don't have a gender," Torin said, "because according to the invoice she sent me for genetic testing, the DNA was inconclusive, but I paid $4,000 for the test." He pulled up the digital files of the ultrasounds. He overlaid the one Cassian had with the one Yarick had. They were identical matches. Not just similar, identical. The position of the fetuses, the grain of the image, even the pixelated noise in the corner. The only difference was the text at the top. One said Cassian, one said Yarick, and the third, the one she hadn't sent yet, was likely being photoshopped with Torin as we spoke. "She's playing us," Yarick said. "She's playing all of us. I'm going to fly back. I'm going to go to her house and—" "No," Torin cut him off. "You do that, she plays the victim. She calls the cops. She claims stress caused a miscarriage. We lose. The money is gone." "It's not about the money," Cassian said quietly. "It's about the math. She's collecting $15,000 a month from each of us. That's $45,000 a month. $500,000 a year. Where is it going? She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. She drives a Civic. I checked her credit report. She has no assets. Where is the cash?" Torin cracked his knuckles. "Give me 10 minutes." Torin didn't need a warrant. He needed a routing number. He had sent his payments via Zelle and wire transfer. He traced the destination account. It was a standard checking account at a regional bank. But then he traced the outbound transfers. He shared his screen again. The list of transactions scrolled down like a waterfall of indulgence. There were no payments to doctors, no payments to hospitals, no payments to a doula. Instead, there were payments to the Ritz-Carlton, Cancun, Tiffany Co., Porsche Financial Services, DraftKings. "DraftKings?" Yarick asked. "She gambles?" "No," Cassian said, leaning closer to the screen. "Look at the recurrent payment. It's Venmo, Silas M. Every week, $2,000 was being sent to a user named Silas M." Torin opened a new tab. He searched for Silas M. on Instagram. The profile popped up. Silas wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a family member. Silas was a 22-year-old personal trainer with 6-pack abs, a sleeve of tattoos, and a bio that read, "Living my best life. Self-made." He clicked on the most recent post. It was a photo of Silas leaning against a brand-new matte black Porsche Macan. The caption read, "New whip. Hard work pays off. Thanks to my baby for the surprise gift. #grind, #blessed." In the reflection of the car door, you could see the person taking the photo. It was Elara. She wasn't pregnant. She was wearing a bikini top and shorts, holding the phone, laughing. The silence on the Zoom call changed. It wasn't just shock anymore. It was humiliation. They weren't just paying for a fake baby. They were funding her boyfriend. Cassian, the architect, was paying for the car Silas drove. Yarick, the oil rigger, who worked 18-hour shifts in freezing rain, was paying for the vacation Silas was taking in Cancun. Torin, the CEO, was paying for the designer clothes Silas was wearing in his stories. "She's not a mother," Cassian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She's a sugar mama, and we are the bank." Yarick slammed his fist onto the metal desk of the rig so hard that the camera shook. "I'm killing him. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to—" "No!" Torin cut him off. "You do that, she plays the victim. She calls the cops. She claims stress caused a miscarriage. We lose. The money is gone." "It's not about the money," Cassian said quietly. "It's about the math. She's collecting $15,000 a month from each of us. That's $45,000 a month. $500,000 a year. Where is it going? She lives in a 2-bedroom apartment. She drives a Civic. I checked her credit report. She has no assets. Where is the cash?" Torin smiled. It was a cold, digital smile. "We let her finish the play. We let her think she's won. What's the next milestone?" Cassian checked his phone. He sent an invite yesterday, the virtual baby shower. Next Saturday. She says she's too high risk for visitors, so it's online only. She set up a cash registry. She wants donations for a stem cell banking procedure to save the twins' future health. The goal is $10,000. "Perfect," Torin said. "We attend." "All of us?" all of us. But we don't go as ourselves. We go as the ghosts she never thought would meet. She wants a public event. Let's give her a public event. But we need to make sure everyone is watching. Who else is invited? Her family. Her mom, her sisters, her friends from college. She sent the link to everyone. She's trying to maximize the hall before the due date. Then we have the venue, Torin said. The digital courtroom. She thinks she's logging on to collect checks. We're going to log on to collect her soul. They spent the next hour coordinating. Cassian would handle the legal prep. He had a lawyer on retainer who specialized in fraud. He would draft the affidavits. Yarick would handle the intimidation. He would gather the physical evidence, the receipts, the logs, the travel records from when she visited him. Torin would handle the tech. He would make sure that once the live stream started, Elara wouldn't be able to mute it, end it, or kick anyone out. He was going to hijack the feed. One more thing, Cassian said before they logged off. The car, the Porsche. What about it? I checked the license plate from the photo. It's leased in her name, but the payments are coming from my medical checks. So, Cassian said, I know the dealership owner. I designed his showroom. I'm going to make a call. By the time that baby shower starts, Silas is going to be walking home. The trap was set. Elara spent the week posting countdowns on her Instagram. 5 days until the twin shower. So grateful for my village. She posted photos of a beautifully decorated room. A stock photo she stole from Pinterest. She sent reminders to Cassian, Yarick, and Torin. Make sure you log on early. I have a special announcement. She had no idea that the special announcement wasn't going to be hers. She sat in her living room on Saturday morning, adjusting the ring light, putting on a fake baby bump from foam and silicone, and checking her bank account balance. She saw the login numbers climbing. Mom joined. Sister joined. Best friend joined. 30 people. 40 people. She smiled at the camera. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Then 3 new users joined the lobby. She didn't recognize the usernames at first because they weren't names. They were dates. User, payment started January 12. User, payment started February 14. User, payment started March 1st. She frowned. Who are... Oh, must be some friends with weird handles. Welcome. She was about to start her speech about the difficulties of carrying twins. She was about to ask for the $10,000. But then her screen flickered. The host controls turned gray. A message popped up on her screen. Admin override initiated. She clicked her mouse. Nothing happened. She tried to close the window. It wouldn't close. And then the main video feed, the one showing her face, split into 4. Her face moved to the corner, and in the other 3 squares, 3 men appeared. Cassian in his suit, Yarick in his rig gear, Torin in his server room. Elara's face froze. Her eyes darted to the participants list. Her mother was watching. Her sister was watching. Her entire world was watching. Hey guys, she stammered, her voice pitching up an octave. I think there's a glitch. These are my donors. We are not donors, Elara, Cassian said. We are the fathers. All 3 of us. The silence that followed Cassian's declaration was heavy enough to break the internet connection. We are the fathers. All 3 of us. Elara's face went from confusion to pure, distilled panic. She lunged for her laptop, hammering the escape key, trying to force quit the application. But Torin had done his job well. The window was locked in kiosk mode. She couldn't minimize it. She couldn't mute it. She was trapped in a digital cage of her own making. Mom! Aunt Sarah! Elara screamed at the camera, her voice shrill and breaking. Log off! These men are hackers. They're stalking me. I don't know who they are. You don't know us? Jarick's voice boomed from the top right square. He held up a framed photo of him and Elara, cheek to cheek, taken on the pier 3 months ago. She was kissing his temple. You knew me well enough to take my $6,000 for a nursery deposit last Tuesday. That's Photoshop, Elara yelled, tears streaming down her face now. He's lying. This is a deepfake.
"Mom, please!" Torn didn't yell. He simply pressed a key. The screen layout changed. The video feeds shrank to the top, and a large document appeared in the center. It was a spreadsheet. But not just any spreadsheet. It was a timeline. "Elara," Torn said, his voice sounding like a bored IT technician explaining a user error. "This is your ovulation cycle overlaid with your travel itinerary. According to your claim, you conceived with Cassian on the 12th, you conceived with Jarek on the 14th, and you conceived with me on the 15th. Unless you have a uterus that defies the laws of biology, you are lying to at least two of us. But here's the kicker." Torn highlighted a row in red. "On all three of those dates, you weren't with any of us. You were in Cabo, with Silas." The chat sidebar, which had been full of congratulations and heart emojis just moments ago, suddenly stopped. Then a single message appeared from Mom. "Who is Silas?" Elara saw the message. Her eyes widened. "Mom, don't listen to them. Silas he's my trainer. He's gay. He's just a friend." "Is he?" Cassian asked. "Then why is he driving the Porsche Macan that I am currently paying for? The one parked in your driveway right now?" Elara froze. "You're crazy," she whispered. "There's no Porsche." "Really?" Cassian checked his watch. "Because I called the dealership this morning. I told them that the leaseholder, me, was revoking authorization for the vehicle. I told them the car was being used in the commission of a fraud. The repo truck should be pulling up right about now." As if on cue, a loud, muffled banging sound came from off-camera. It was coming from the front door of Elara's house. Then a voice, a male voice, confused and angry. It wasn't a repo man. It was Silas. The door to the room behind Elara flew open. Elara spun around in her chair, forgetting the camera, forgetting the bed rest act. Silas walked in. He was shirtless, holding a protein shake, looking furious. "Babe!" he yelled, oblivious to the laptop. "Some dudes are hooking up the Macan. They said the lease is void. Go tell them who you are. Tell them you're pregnant with twins or whatever." The audio was crisp. Every person in the Zoom call heard it. "Tell them you're pregnant with twins or whatever." The chat sidebar exploded. "Aunt Sarah, whatever? Cousin Jen, Elara, what is going on? Mom, Elara, answer me." Elara turned back to the screen, her face pale as a sheet. She tried to cover the lens with her hand, but she was shaking too hard. "Silas, get out," she hissed. "I'm on the shower. I'm live." Silas froze. He looked at the ring light. He looked at the laptop screen. He saw the three angry men in the video grid. He saw the timeline on the screen. And then he saw the chat. "Mom, Silas, you told me you were her yoga instructor." Silas didn't try to defend her. He didn't try to save the day. He did the math instantly. The car was gone. The sugar daddies knew. The gig was up. "I didn't know," Silas stammered, backing towards the door, his hands raised in surrender. "I thought it was real. I thought she was actually pregnant." "You liar!" Elara screamed, standing up. And as she stood up, in her panic, the foam prosthetic belly she had strapped on under her dress shifted. It slid sideways, creating a lumpy, unnatural silhouette. She grabbed it, trying to adjust it, but it was too late. 42 people saw the strap. 42 people saw the foam. "That is a pillow," Jarek said, his voice dripping with disgust. Elara sunk back into her chair, burying her face in her hands. The sobbing wasn't fake anymore. It was the sound of a lifestyle dying. "Please," she whimpered, "please just turn it off." "We are not turning it off, Elara. We are archiving it. Every second of this stream has been recorded. It has been sent to your mother, your sister, and your local police department." Cassian leaned in close to his camera. "Enjoy the shower, Elara. We canceled the registry gifts, by the way, but don't worry, we sent you something else. A court summons. It's in the mail." Torn hit a button. Stream ended. The screen went black for the family. The show was over. But for Elara, the nightmare had just begun. She sat in the silence of her living room, the disconnected tone beeping on her laptop, while outside, the sound of a tow truck engine faded into the distance, taking the Porsche and her dignity away forever. Most people would stop here. They would take the win and walk away, but Cassian, Jierek, and Torin weren't looking for a win. They were looking for a burial. They didn't just want to embarrass her. They wanted to make sure she could never, ever do this again. So while Elara was crying in her living room, they initiated phase 2. The silent revenge.
The Zoom call didn't end. Torin ended it. He waited exactly 5 seconds after Silas exposed the lie, just long enough for the horror to set in, and then he cut the feed. The screen went black for 42 people. In Elara's living room, the silence was louder than the screaming had been. Silas stood there, shirtless and confused, watching the repo truck outside hook the Porsche up to the tow bar. Elara sat in her chair, the fake silicone belly pressing uncomfortably against the desk. Her phone was lighting up, text after text. Mom, Aunt Sarah, Cousin Jen. Blocked, blocked, blocked. She didn't answer anyone. She looked at Silas. "Do something!" she shrieked. "Go stop them!" Silas looked at the window, then at Elara. The realization was dawning on him. The car was gone. The rich baby daddy story was blown. The gravy train had just derailed. "I'm not stopping anything," Silas said, stepping back. "You said you had this handled. You said they were stupid." "They are. They just repoed my car remotely, Elara. They aren't stupid, and I'm not going to jail for you." He didn't help her. He went to the bedroom and started packing a duffel bag. That was the first phase of the collapse. Isolation. But the men weren't done. The public humiliation was just the fireworks. Now came the demolition crew. This is the phase of revenge that most people skip. Amateurs stop at the gotcha moment. Professionals make sure the target can never recover. Monday morning arrived. Elara woke up alone. Silas was gone. The apartment was quiet. She tried to order a coffee on Uber Eats to soothe her nerves. Transaction declined. She tried again. Transaction declined. She logged into her banking app. The balance wasn't zero. The balance was negative $4,000, and there was a red banner across the top. Account frozen, pending investigation. Cassian had not just stopped paying. He had filed a fraud claim for every single transfer he had sent in the last 6 months. He flagged them as wire fraud and theft by deception. Because the amounts were over $10,000, the bank's algorithm didn't ask questions. It just locked the doors. Elara had no cash, no credit, no car. She tried to call Cassian, straight to voicemail. She tried Jierek, blocked. She tried Torin. To her surprise, the call connected. "Torin!" she cried, breathless. "Thank God! You have to listen. It was a misunderstanding. Silas is my cousin. He's crazy. The twins are yours, I swear." "Elara," Torin interrupted. His voice was calm, robotic. "I am currently recording this call for the district attorney. Anything you say will be added to the file. We just uploaded the evidence." "What evidence?" "The IP logs, the photoshopped metadata, the receipts from the boutique, and the affidavit from Silas." She stopped breathing. "Silas?" "We offered him a deal," Torin said. "Immunity from prosecution if he turned over his text messages with you. He sent us everything. The script you wrote for him, the plan to fake a miscarriage in month 8. It's all here. Goodbye, Elara." Click. She was holding a brick. The silent revenge phase was in full swing. The men didn't need to scream at her. They let the bureaucracy do the screaming. By Wednesday, the eviction notice was taped to her door. She was 3 months behind on rent, and without the child support payments, she couldn't even pay the late fees. By Thursday, her Instagram account, her main source of validation, was gone. Torin and mass reported it for frauds and scams, backed with hundreds of bot accounts he deployed to flag every single post she had ever made about the pregnancy. She was erased. But she still thought she could win. Narcissists always do. They think they can cry their way out of math. She dressed up. She put the fake belly back on. Habit, perhaps, or delusion. She went to the only place she thought she had power. The family court. She filed an emergency petition for spousal abandonment and pre-birth support. She listed all 3 men. She thought if she got them in front of a judge, she could cry, faint, and get a sympathetic ruling. She thought the legal system was designed to protect mothers, even the fake ones. She didn't know that this was exactly what Cassian wanted. He didn't want to chase her. He wanted her to walk into the trap willingly. When the summons arrived at Cassian's office, he didn't throw it away. He smiled. He called Jarek. "She filed," Cassian said. "Good, I'm booking my flight." She set the court date for August 14th. She thinks we won't show up because we're ashamed. She thinks we'll settle out of court to avoid the scandal. "She has no idea," Jarek growled. "I'm bringing the popcorn." The weeks leading up to the trial were quiet. Too quiet. Elara sat in her apartment, eating ramen bought with loose change she found in the couch cushions. She practiced her speech in the mirror. She practiced the tears. She told herself that these men were monsters, that she was the victim of their cruelty. She convinced herself that the DNA test could be faked or refused or delayed. "I'll tell the judge it's too risky to test the babies while they're in the womb," she whispered to her reflection. "He'll believe me. They always believe the mother." August 14th arrived, the day of the packed courtroom, the day we saw at the beginning of this story. She walked in thinking she was the plaintiff. She walked in thinking she was about to secure a paycheck. She didn't notice the man sitting in the back row, wearing a hoodie, looking down at his feet. It was Silas. He wasn't there to support her. He was there because he had been subpoenaed by Cassian's lawyer as a hostile witness. She didn't notice the stack of papers on the judge's bench. She just saw the 3 men, Cassian, Jarek, Torin. They weren't looking at her. They were looking at the judge, waiting for the curtain to rise. Judge Vance called the court to order. Case number 49202, Elara versus Cassian, Jarek, and Torin, regarding paternity and support. The judge looked at the file. He frowned. "Miss Elara, you are claiming emergency support for unborn twins." "Yes, Your Honor," Elara said, her voice trembling perfectly. "These men, they abandoned me. I have no money for food. I have no money for doctors. My babies are at risk." "I see," the judge said. "And which of these men is the father?" I am not sure, Your Honor. We were all close, but they all agreed to support me." Objection. Cassian's lawyer stood up. He was a shark in a gray suit. "My clients did not agree to support a fiction. They agreed to support a child. We have a motion to dismiss and a counter-motion for criminal fraud. We also have a request for immediate medical verification." "Medical verification?" Elara scoffed, gaining confidence. "I have my ultrasounds. I have my doctor's notes." She waved the stack of forged papers. The lawyer smiled. "Your Honor, we don't need notes. We have a portable ultrasound machine in the witness room, and we have a court-appointed technician standing by. If the plaintiff is indeed pregnant with twins, we will write her a check for $100,000 right now, today." The gallery gasped. $100,000. It was the ultimate bluff, or the ultimate truth. Cassian leaned forward. He locked eyes with Elara. "Take the deal," his eyes said. "Lie one more time." Elara looked at the judge. She looked at the money on the table. Greed warred with survival. She stammered. "I can't. It's too stressful for the babies." "Miss Elara," Judge Vance said, his voice hardening, "this is a court of law. You are asking for money based on a medical condition. The court has the right to verify that condition. You will submit to the test, or you will dismiss your case with prejudice." She was cornered. "Fine," she hissed, "but I want everyone out. I want privacy." "Denied," the judge said. "You brought this case to the public. The result will be public." The technician rolled in the machine. The lights were dimmed. Elara lay on the table, her shirt pulled up, the fake silicone belly removed, revealing her bare, flat stomach. She squeezed her eyes shut, praying for a miracle, praying for anything. The technician applied the gel. He placed the wand on her abdomen. The monitor flickered to life on the large screens mounted on the wall. Static. Gray, empty static. He moved the wand left. Nothing. He moved it right. Nothing. He checked the ovaries. He checked the uterus. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor," the technician said, his voice echoing in the silent room, "the uterus is empty. The lining is thin. There is no pregnancy. There never was."
The technician's words hung in the air like smoke. There is no pregnancy. There never was. For 3 seconds, the only sound was the hum of the machine. Then, the gallery erupted. It wasn't applause. It was a collective, horrified gasp that turned into murmurs of disbelief. Elara sat up on the medical table, the blue paper gown crinkling loudly. She looked small. She looked exposed. For the first time in 3 years, she had no prop, no filter, and no lie to hide behind. Judge Vance slammed his gavel. "Order," he bellowed. "Order in this court." The noise died down, but the tension didn't. The judge looked down at Elara. His face was no longer impartial. It was disgusted. "Ms. Elara," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "you have wasted the court's time. You have wasted these men's money, and you have mocked the very concept of motherhood. Do you have anything to say before I hold you in contempt?" Elara opened her mouth. The old instincts kicked in. She wanted to say it was a miscarriage. She wanted to say the technician was lying. But she looked at the plaintiff's table. She looked at Cassian. Cassian wasn't looking at her. He was holding up his phone. He was live streaming. He had hit go live the moment the technician spoke. 50,000 people were watching her face crumble in real time. She slumped. The fight left her body. I needed the money," she whispered. It was the only honest thing she had said in the entire relationship. "For what?" the judge asked. "To feed a child or to lease a Porsche for your boyfriend?" The judge gestured to the back of the room. "Bailiff, take Mr. Silas into custody as a material witness, and take Miss Elara into custody for 3 counts of grand larceny and perjury." The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. Elara was let out, her head down, passing the 3 men she had duped. She stopped in front of Torin. "Why?" she asked, tears finally spilling over. "Why did you have to ruin me? You have millions. You wouldn't have even missed the money." Torin looked at her. He adjusted his glasses. "I didn't do it for the money, Elara," he said. "I did it because you messed with the data. And I hate bad data." The doors closed behind her. The hearing was over, but the punishment wasn't. The brutal public payback phase had just begun. You see, in the digital age, prison isn't just 4 walls. It's a URL that never expires. Cassian, Jarek, and Torin didn't just want her in jail. They wanted to make sure she could never pull this scam on another man again. They took the court footage, public record, and they packaged it. They didn't sell it to TMZ. They didn't sell it to the news. They uploaded it to a dedicated website, https://www.google.com/q=thetwintrap.com. On the site, they posted everything. The fake ultrasounds, the text messages, the photos of the Porsche, the timeline of the lies. And at the very top, the video of the technician saying, "The uterus is empty." They paid for SEO. They paid for ads. Within 48 hours, if you Googled Elara blank last name, the first result wasn't her Instagram. It wasn't her LinkedIn. It was the site. It was a digital scarlet letter. The viral video hit 10 million views in a week. The Elara face, that look of pure panic when the ultrasound came up blank, became a meme.
Strangers were stitching the video on TikTok, analyzing her body language, laughing at her audacity. She became the face of entitlement, the patron saint of gold diggers. Jarek went back to the oil rig, but before he left, he did one last interview with a local news station. The reporter asked him, "Do you feel bad for her? She's facing 5 years in prison." Jarek looked into the camera, his face weathered and hard. He said, "I work 80 hours a week hanging off the side of a platform in the middle of the ocean. I send that money home to build a life. She took that life and spent it on handbags. No, I don't feel bad. I feel like the trash finally took itself out." Cassian returned to his architecture firm. He framed the paternity test result, the one that said 0% probability, and hung it in his office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder to always check the foundation. Torin did what Torin does. He wrote a script. He created a simple algorithm that scrapes dating apps for users using Elara's photos or bio. If it finds a match, it automatically sends a warning to the person she matched with. He called it the Elara protocol. He released it for free. 3 months later, Elara accepted a plea deal. 3 years in state prison, restitution of $150,000 to be paid to the victims. She stood in front of the judge for sentencing, wearing an orange jumpsuit this time. No designer clothes, no fake belly. She looked tired. "I'm sorry to the court," she said. "I just wanted to be someone." The judge looked at her over his glasses. "Miss Elara," he said, "you got your wish. You are now someone. You are an inmate." The gavel banged. She was led away to serve her time. But the story didn't end there. Because as she was walking down the hallway to the transport bus, the press was waiting. Cameras flashed. Microphones were shoved in her face. One reporter shouted, "Elara, do you have anything to say to the fathers?" She looked up. She looked right at the camera, and for a second, the mask slipped back on, a faint, defiant smirk. "Tell them thanks for the Porsche." It was a final act of bravado, a final attempt to win. But nobody laughed, because as she stepped onto the bus, the camera panned back to the crowd. Standing there, watching her leave, were Cassian, Jarek, and Torin. They weren't angry anymore. They weren't sad. They were just done. They turned around and walked away. 3 strangers who shared a war story, disappearing into the city. They had their money back, mostly. They had their dignity back. But most importantly, they had the last word. And that last word wasn't spoken in a courtroom. It wasn't written in a blog post. It was spoken by Cassian, right at the beginning, in that frozen moment before the bailiffs took her. The 7 words that defined the entire saga.
It has been exactly 365 days since Elara traded her penthouse view for a view of a prison yard fence. In that time, the world has moved on. The Elara meme has faded. The internet has found new villains to hate. But for the 3 men who stood in that courtroom, the silence is finally real. Cassian is back in his studio. He is currently designing a library, a building dedicated to truth, structurally sound, with a foundation that goes 40 feet into the bedrock. He doesn't date much anymore. He checks the background of every photo he has sent. He checks the metadata of every file. He has learned that trust is good, but verification is cheaper. Jarek is back on the rig. The North Sea is cold, but it's honest. He used the money he recovered from the settlement to buy his own boat. He named it The Truth. He spends his weeks off fishing in silence, far away from the noise of fabricated ultrasounds and fake tears. And Torin? Torin is richer than ever. His Elara protocol algorithm was bought by a major dating app for 8 figures. He turned his heartbreak into a security feature. He proved that even a broken heart can be optimized if you have the right code. They never speak to each other. They don't have a group chat. They don't meet for drinks on the anniversary of the verdict.
They are bound by a secret that is darker than the money they lost. They know that they didn't just survive Elara, they destroyed her. They worked together to dismantle a human being piece by piece, receipt by receipt. It wasn't justice, it was surgery. Elara sits in her cell tonight. She has no Instagram, she has no filters. She has no audience except for a cellmate who doesn't care about her twins. She spends her days wondering where she went wrong. She wonders if she should have faked one baby instead of two. She wonders if she should have picked dumber men. But mostly, she thinks about that moment in the courtroom. She thinks about the moment right before the handcuffs clicked. The moment Cassian leaned into the microphone. Throughout this entire story, we told you that he said 7 words that broke her. We told you that he revealed the trap. Now, finally, you get to hear them.
Cassian didn't scream. He didn't look angry. He looked like an architect looking at a building that had finally collapsed exactly as he predicted. He looked her in the eye, smiled a cold, flat smile, and whispered, "We didn't pay child support. We paid for evidence." That was the difference. She thought she was milking them for cash. They were paying a subscription fee to watch her ruin herself. Every dollar was a data point. Every transfer was a nail in the coffin. She thought she was the player. She never realized she was just the game. Don't be like Elara. Don't build a life on a foundation that doesn't exist, because sooner or later, an architect, a roughneck, and a CEO might just walk into the same room. And when they do, the math will always win. If you enjoyed watching this house of cards fall, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to see more stories where the liar gets exactly what they deserve, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the truth is always watching. And so are we.